You're gonna have to float on over. Good time to do the dynamite. Indian walker in my head. Giant.
Yeah, I'll bring it.
You got his first.
All right, the time is now 5:30. We will call the city council meeting for the city of Statesboro, Georgia. Today's date is October the 20th. We'll have our invocation and pledge of allegiance by Councilmember John Riggs.
I'd like at this time for Pastor Sam Jones to give our invocation, if you wouldn't mind, please.
All right. Orlando.
Thank you.
Count.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Mayor, council members, all staff members, citizens of Statesboro, thank you, Councilman Griggs' opportunity to pray, to give an invocation, as some call it. This time, please pray with me. Heavenly Father, the creator of the universe, we thank you for the opportunity to come in here what we call the Statesboro Chambers. I ask, Father, that we know you're here, but we just welcome you here. We invite you here, thinking that you are here, so that you can help us, Lord. Help the council members and the mayor, help them have clarity, grant them peace, Lord. We ask for serenity, we ask for courage, we ask for wisdom, and help them change the things that need to be changed, and give them the wisdom to know the difference. All these things, that's the name of the Father, the creator of the universe. So may it be. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor. We'll go back to agenda item 3, which is recognition of public presentations. Our first presentation is in honor of Jan Tankersley. At the end of every legislative biennium, the Georgia Municipal Association honors legislators who have defended home rule principles both in their communities and under the Gold Dome. This honor is called the Champion of Georgia Cities Award. Representative Tankersley has been a friend to the city of Statesboro and to all local governments in the state of Georgia. More specifically, Representative Tankersley authored House Bill 456, which successfully increased flexibility for local governments with the annual audit process. The city of Statesboro is lucky to have a representative that values the principles of local control. As the mayor of the city of Statesboro, it is my honor to recognize Representative Tankersley this evening as a champion of Georgia cities. Now, she could not be here on this evening, but we did want to recognize her work. The city of Statesboro is a very fortunate city. We have 3 state representatives, and all 3 of those individuals work extremely hard to help move our community forward, and they've been a tremendous asset. We want to honor them all, but tonight's recognition goes to Representative Jan Tankersley. So if you see Representative Tankersley out and about, definitely thank her for her hard work. And when we do go to the Gold Dome, she does show excellent hospitality. So we want to thank her for that. We'll move down.
I just wanted to add one more thing into her resume. That is that she helped us get the Keep Statesboro Beautiful back on its feet here, and so we now have a full-time person doing that. So, and that is largely thanks to the efforts of Representative Tankersley.
Absolutely, she's phenomenal. Speaking of that, I guess it's a good time for those of you who do not know. This weekend we will be hosting another community cleanup. The cleanup will be from 9 until 1 p.m. This is a socially distanced event. You know, even in the midst of COVID, we still can do some great things within our community. So we definitely want to continue to do that. We're gonna move down to item 3B on our agenda, which is a presentation of a proclamation to Safe Haven for Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Do we have a representative from Safe Haven tonight? We don't?
Lisa Brandon was supposed to be here.
Okay. All right, well, I'll go ahead and read the proclamation, and if she comes, we'll definitely let her get this.
Okay.
But the proclamation reads as follows. A proclamation by the mayor and city council of Statesboro, Georgia, honoring October 2020 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Whereas the crime of domestic violence violates an individual's privacy, dignity, security, and humanity due to the systemic use of physical, emotional, sexual, psychological, and economic control and/or abuse. And whereas domestic violence leaves an imprint of fear and hostility. And whereas the problem of domestic violence are not confined to any group or groups of people, but cross all economic, racial, affectional preferences, and social barriers, therefore affecting society as a whole. And whereas in the city of Statesboro, adults and children are victims of violence each year. And whereas Statesboro City Council is committed to restoring the right to freedom from fear in our homes. And whereas Statesboro City Council is committed to restoring the right to freedom from fear in our communities. And whereas in our quest to impose sanctions on those who break the law by perpetrating violence, we must also meet the needs of victims of domestic violence and their children, who often suffer grave financial, physical, and psychological losses. And now therefore be it resolved that in recognition of the important work done by domestic violence programs, in cooperation with Safe Haven, I, Jonathan McCollum, Mayor of the City of Statesboro, on behalf of the entire City Council, does hereby proclaim the month of October 2020 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month. We urge all citizens, agencies, businesses to work together as a team in our community through prevention, intervention, and education programs to eliminate domestic violence and become a violence-free community. Passed and adopted by the City of Statesboro this 20th day of October 2020. Hey, how you doing? You would like to say a word too?
I just, of course, would like to say thank you, Mayor and City Council. We appreciate the opportunity for y'all to recognize Safe Haven and Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Everything that we do every day kind of accumulates in this month of awareness. So we sincerely appreciate it.
We thank you. We thank you for everything that you're
Thank
doing
you.
within the community. I'm gonna come back.
Okay.
I'm about to do the social distance style. Thank you. You take care.
Thank y'all. Thank you.
Okay. All right, we move down to agenda item 4, public comments. Liz, do we have any public comments?
Nobody that signed up, no.
Okay, thank you. We'll move down to agenda item 5, which is consideration of motion to approve consent agenda. The consent agenda includes our October the 6th council minutes, our October the 6th executive minutes. Is there a motion to approve? So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? All right, let it show that the consent agenda has passed. We'll move down to agenda item 6, which is a public hearing, second reading, consideration of a motion to approve ordinance 2020-07, an ordinance creating chapter 80, non-discrimination and equity. Chapter 80 consists of 3 articles: non-discrimination ordinance, non-discrimination in purchasing and contracting, and equity provision. Is there a motion to open the public hearing? So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Kane, if you will.
Mayor and Council, this is Chapter 80, as stated in the agenda memo. It does consist of 3 parts. One is the Anti-Discrimination Ordinance. This creates a local cause of action should any unlawful practices occur. Those unlawful practices as enumerated are: it shall be unlawful discrimination practice for a business because of the race, religion, color, sex, disability, national origin, etc., to refuse to hire or employ such person. So there's an employment protection. It also outlaws the businesses discriminating against anyone in terms of sale or rental of real property or anything associated with that, and offering goods, services, facilities, and accommodations to any person. So this would create a local cause of action that would allow the complainant to file an action with the city clerk, which would then be referred to mediation, and if mediation was elected not to be participated in or was ultimately unsuccessful, it would go before the judge in municipal court to determine if one of those unlawful practices occurred. Upon first violation, it would be up to $500 civil penalty and up to $1,000 civil penalty and/or suspension of occupational tax certificate for subsequent violations. It also, that first article also provides for reporting of hate crimes. The second article is non-discrimination in purchasing and contracting by the city. This sets out certain goals for participation by female and minority business enterprises. It also creates a buying preference for vendors that are qualified as local MFBE vendors. Article 3 involves the equity provision, which involves diversity and inclusion training by city employees, and also measuring and monitoring a campaign for equity, the results of which would be compiled and resulted by the One Borough Commission.
Thank you. We appreciate that, Kane. At this point in time, we'll open it up for public comment. Before going into public comment, I do want to make a statement. Everyone that comes up will have the opportunity to speak. The time limit will be 3 minutes, and we will, that time period will be monitored. I think there's been some confusion in regards to this ordinance, and I think there's some stuff that's going around on social media that I want to address immediately. It says, FYI, the mayor and city council of Statesboro are trying to push through a hate speech resolution that if you say anything against Antifa, Black Lives Matter, etc., you will be arrested. They have a meeting tonight at 5:30 at City Hall. They have not made this public knowledge. The mayor says he will get it passed. Now is the time is not the time to be silent. If you can go to the meeting, be there. Pray, let others know. And this and other messages like this have been shared across social media. And what I want to tell the city of Statesboro and all of those that call this beautiful city home is that this is a blatant lie. This is a blatant lie. And for this to be circulating in our community, what I want you to know is that we are better than this. This is shameful. And for the last few weeks, I've had a fear in me that something could happen in this community because of this level of ignorance being perpetrated. I have a family in this city. I have children in this city. Just like everybody else up here on this council, we love the people of this community. And for this blatant lie to be put out into the community by a group of people that's really sacrificing to make this community better for everyone, this is embarrassing to the city. And it's cowardice. We are better than this, Statesboro. Don't let these national politicians who do not live here, they're stoking fear across this nation, seep into what we do in our city. Those folks have never come to Statesboro, and we are the ones that put the blood, sweat, and tears into this city to make it great. It is us, not them. And it is shameful for this to be going on. Our children play ball together. Our children go to school together. We are not each other's enemy. leave these politics alone. They lying to both sides. They got you in fear of your neighbor. Got you showing up with guns at prayer vigils on both sides. We are better than this, Statesboro. So if anyone is here to speak on this before you get up, I want you to know that it is a lie. And so now we will open it up to the public.
Mr. Mayor, may I?
Yeah, council members come after the public. So we're gonna follow the order.
I want to address what you just said because my name has been associated with that, and I am 100% behind what your statement just said.
Go ahead. This is the point of
I
privilege.
taught you're my son. Now they've grown into different
Yeah, they're
heights.
both taller than, well, your son ain't tall as you yet. Mine don't beat me.
Give him
I ain't
a
told him yet,
Give him
though.
another minute. I'm shrinking.
Yeah, go
But
ahead.
you're right. Our families live here. I mean, your son and my son, despite our differences, played on the same basketball team when they were little kids.
Yeah,
You know, we may have our differences up here, but I am absolutely 100% confident that everyone here, the mayor and myself, we love this community. And the fact that someone is associating my name
yeah.
with this nonsense is unacceptable. I am absolutely 100% for anyone in the public to come up here and speak. But if you're gonna put on Facebook that I am spreading hate or dissension or any of those kinds, now I will come up here and speak my mind and speak my piece, but I am not sowing seeds of hate or dissension or any of those things. So I am 100% behind what the mayor just said. Whatever people are putting on Facebook is, I almost said something that we shouldn't say
Don't
again,
say it. Don't say
is a little bit bull and it comes out the back end, if you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, so I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah.
And anybody, whoever put my name tied to this, that's unacceptable. And it's not me. I encourage anyone to come up here and speak their piece. But if you're tying me to hatred and dissension and anything along those lines, that's nonsense. I'm sorry, Mayor, I appreciate it.
Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, one more clarification. Folks who know more about this than I tell me that this originated from a spoof account, a troublemaker who has an account that can't be traced back to a human in Bullock County started the rumor. So it's a troublemaker who wasn't willing to put a name to it, who started it, and then people who don't know any better picked it up and spread it. So it's just a caution. When you see something that sounds unreasonable, don't copy it, don't repeat it, don't pass it on, don't share it unless you go back to the person you know who posted it and confirm it. That's how so much trouble gets started by folks sharing things.
Exactly. And I'm gonna be honest with you. We had people in this community planning to show up to a prayer vigil with guns against people that live here.
So don't believe everything you see on
You can't,
Facebook.
put the social media down, leave those trolls alone. They don't mean any of us any good. But with that being said, thank you, Sherry, thank you, Phil. And let's not give that any more time. I'm gonna call your name out. I'm gonna ask you, are you here to speak for or against? If you are here to speak for, that group will go first. If you are here to speak against, that group will go second. That is a procedure, that's the procedure of that. The first thing that I have on the list is a 3-minute time limit. Is Nathan Palmer, are you here to speak for or against?
For.
Okay, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. I'm here to support all 3 parts of the non-discrimination ordinance, but I specifically want to give my support for the MFBE piece, or the minority female-owned business enterprises part. Currently, 92% of the city contracts go to white male-owned businesses. Did everyone hear that? 92% go to white male-owned businesses. According to the census, roughly 49% of the population is white in the city of Statesboro. Given the regular distribution of genders, that's around 25% of the population of this city. That controls 92% of all of the city's contracts. If that's not a call to action, I'm not sure exactly what is. Would 100% be what we're waiting for? The MFBE piece of this ordinance gives a 3% advantage to female and minority-owned businesses, assuming that I believe that they're Bullitt County residents. That is a mere baby step toward equality. That is a drop in the bucket. That is going to take a long time to address the 92% to 8% discrepancy in city contracts. Specifically, I find it hard to believe that such a small advantage will prevent white males in Statesboro from earning a living. Furthermore, if a non-discrimination ordinance makes it impossible for your business to be profitable, perhaps you should change your business model. That would be my unsolicited advice. And should this ordinance lead to the minority female-owned businesses in Statesboro coming to control an overwhelming majority of all of the city contracts, I trust that all of you will reconvene and pass an amendment to the law. I don't doubt that you are all more than capable of that. To be honest with you, if my tone doesn't communicate this, I really just don't get this. This ordinance, like I said, is just a baby step toward equality. This ordinance benefits the majority of all of your constituents. The people who vote for you, the majority of them benefit from this. And that would be directly, but indirectly, we all benefit from this. Our community's strength is tied to the level of inequality that we see. Our city is weak when a few people are doing very well and the rest are struggling. Our city is not economically competitive if we are not in line with the business practices of the rest of the country, in my opinion. This ordinance is good for business and economic growth. In my opinion, this ordinance is taking us towards the future of Statesboro. I implore you, if you're not with us on this, join us. And if you are, lead us. Vote yes on this non-discrimination ordinance today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have Greg Brock. Are you for?
I'm for.
You will?
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. I'm glad to see the city joining J.P. Morgan Chase, which this month has committed $30 billion over the next 5 years towards programs that include earmarking more money for getting Black and Latino families into home ownership and providing additional financing to build affordable rental units. The CEO of J.P. Morgan Chase said, "Systemic racism is a tragic part of America's history. We can do more and do better to break down systems that have propagated racism and widespread economic inequality." That's from J.P. Morgan Chase, one of the world's largest banks. Not known to be a home of radical left thought, by the way. Income tax returns, I'm quoting from the work of Raj Chetty, who has access to millions of IRS tax returns, keeping confidentiality with them. And he won a MacArthur grant to do that, a Genius grant. He shows that household wealth for whites increased 84% 1983 to 2013, 3 times the gains of African American families and 1.2 times the rate of Latino families. So we need to address that. And this ordinance, I think, is a baby step towards addressing that. Also, there are those who argue for equality, that when the bids come in, it should be level, and that they're against the 20% MFBE goal or the 6% or 3% buying preference for minority MFBE here in Bullitt County. But those people don't mention the massive subsidies that they're getting. They're having their wealth subsidized massively, paying for college, saving for retirement and the tax breaks there, the mortgage interest deduction that goes more towards wealthy people who can buy a home and buy big homes and get that huge tax break. These are massive federal subsidies going to whites, and they don't mention that when they say, let's have a level playing field, let's make it all equal. They're not mentioning the subsidies that they are receiving. Also, the discrimination, we're 50 years after the Fair Housing Act, and if you look at conventional home loans, 20% of black applicants are denied, but only 8% of whites. If you look at refinancing to take advantage of the really low interest rates out there, 40% of black households are denied that refinancing, only 23% of whites. And if you talk to banks and say, why is this disparity? They'll say, well, these minority groups have lower credit scores and less wealth. So it's like a catch-22 here. So this is ordinance is addressing and helping to address this massive wealth disparity. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Lubecki, for or against?
Four. Okay. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, can I start, by the way?
Yes, sure.
Okay. So I'm a professor of political science and international studies at Georgia Southern University. I'm also a member of one borough commission, so full disclosure in this respect. I'm an immigrant. I was born in 1965 in Poland, which was a communist country that denied freedom and democracy to everybody. And I spent half of my life under communism. And that was the type of regime that stood in the way of freedom and justice for everybody. And so number one, based on that experience, I urge you to approve the ordinance in pursuit of freedom and justice, which again, I was denied for half of my life, and I would love to be pursued here in this country, in the community where I live. Being an immigrant, I'm also subject to this ordinance, which bans discrimination based on national origin. And certainly myself and my wife, who is disabled, have experienced discrimination. It's, you know, some people think that discrimination doesn't exist, it's real, especially against disabled people. My wife is epileptic, has a brain injury, and is blind, and has been discriminated against several times in the United States of America. Discrimination against disabled people is real. Moreover, we live in a world in which a descendant of communist regime, Vladimir Putin, is precisely against ordinances like this. He's proclaimed a worldwide crusade against justice and democracy. And among others, he's spreading disinformation and fascism in the United States. And he's not directly and indirectly responsible for the type of misinformation that you yourself received, Mr. Mayor, about this session. So I think that we are on the right side of history, and we are on the right side of democracy, and we strive for the cause of freedom and equality if we approve this ordinance. And for me, it's personal, but it's also historical and political. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you. All right. And I want to get this right. Chuck Eiler, are you here to speak for or against? Chuck Eiler.
Let me shake down, please, Mayor.
Famous. You okay? She tough, man. She tough. We talking about you, Venus.
Yeah,
Yeah, she tough.
it's a delay, but I
Is
can
it?
hear you.
Okay. We don't have a walkie-talkie, we can. Yeah, so we're gonna move to the next person, we'll come back to Chuck. Diana Botnaru, am I saying that right?
Yes, four.
Four. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, distinguished council members, members of our audience, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak. I'm here to support the ordinance, but I will particularly speak to the anti-discrimination part. I moved to Bulla County in 2004, and I made Statesboro my home since 2012. Like everybody else, I wear many hats. I'm a woman, a mother, a wife, a professor, an LGBTQ ally. But most importantly, I think you realized by now that I'm an immigrant. And like my colleague Jacek, I come from a country that was part of Soviet Union. And I lived under a murderous regime where being different earned you a one-way to Siberia or an execution. When the Iron Curtain fell, we all looked to the US as a beacon of hope and democracy. And when I had a chance, I came to this country as an immigrant because I felt that this is the place where I can be myself. I saw my grandparents and parents live in fear, and I saw the impact they had on their lives. And to me, the US was a promise of a life without fear. As I learned more about my home, it saddened and disappointed me to know that populations are still excluded, discriminated against at school, work, and in the society, and often killed because they are considered different. Among those are the LGBTQ+, a population who have been particularly demonized. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights proclaims that everyone, without distinction, has the right to life, liberty, and security of a person. This was 70 years ago. In human years, it's a lifetime. We cannot wait any longer. While much has been done already toward equality for the LGBTQ+ community, examples of discrimination are still too common. And that's despite the fact that this community never violated anybody's constitutional rights or hurt anybody who did not agree who they are as people. As decent human beings, we have a social responsibility and a moral obligation to make the world better for others. LGBTQ+ people are entitled to equal protection and the same rights as everyone else. They should be able to fully engage in who they are as human beings, to be their authentic selves. With your support and the help of other LGBTQ+ allies, we can make positive changes and ensure that this community does not live in fear. Please vote for the ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Pastor Wayne Miracle. Pastor Wayne.
Yes. We have other people waiting on stage, and then the rest of the speakers to leave and then
I need to find out how many people. But we have to say, it's coming.
Pastor Wayne's on there. Okay. Next I have Butch McKenzie. Butch McKenzie. Butch McKenzie. Okay. Next, we have Nancy Malcolm, and I don't see her. Oh, there she goes.
Thank you for allowing us this chance to speak today. I live just outside the city limits, but I work and shop in Statesboro. We've been here, my family, for 20 years now. I'm speaking today to offer full support of the non-discrimination ordinance. My firsthand experience interacting with college students has opened my eyes to the discrimination that many of our students continue to experience in this city today, based on their race, gender, and often their sexual orientation. This ordinance is important and it is needed to help Statesboro attract and retain many of our most talented young people. I applaud the City Council for taking this action. I also speak today in favor of the local minority or female business entity buying preference. Research consistently shows there are large disparities in the awarding of contracts, and we know that in Statesboro, 92% of the city's spending currently goes to companies with white and male majority ownership. Soothing words about value and equality do not sufficiently address contract discrimination. Disparities in contract awards are rarely due to ill intent. We are full in this city of wonderful, warm-hearted people, but the outcomes continue to persist with discrimination. Instead, discrimination is often rooted in a long history of institutional discrimination that has resulted in patterns where minority business owners have less access and fewer social connections, which paved the way to equal opportunity. As written, this provision does not automatically award contracts to NFBEs with higher bids, but instead, by my reading, it gives these entities an opportunity to match lower non-NFBE bids. Because of this, I support this provision, which provides a concrete way for the city to address the current reality of contract discrimination. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jessica Orvis, are you going to speak for or against?
For.
I have to ask that, Jessica.
That is fine. I get it. I get it.
Thank you.
My name is Jessica Orvis, and I have lived in Statesboro since 1991. My husband and I moved here then, and we raised 2 children here. And in 1991, this was a very different place. When we registered to vote, we had to go to the top floor of the courthouse and answer a series of very interesting questions. If I wanted to have a beer with dinner, I couldn't. We could get beer in the grocery store, but not at a place for dinner. But it was a dark time, the early 90s, for the LGBTQ community in particular. One of my students was violently assaulted on campus, for she was the leader of what was then known as the Triangle Club, which was the student organization for LGBTQ students, a group that dared not publish its meeting location or time. That was a long time ago. Things are better now. Everyone can register to vote very easily. I hope we all have. And if I want a beer with my dinner, that's pretty easy to come by as well. And things are better for the LGBTQ community than they were in the 90s. However, this community is still lacking in local protections from basic discrimination. Some may say that there are federal and state protections available, but I don't think that's enough, because ordinary people often lack the resources to pursue something at the state or federal level. You need money, perhaps, access to lawyers, and you certainly need to know how to work the system. And ordinary people just don't know a lot of that. But that's where local government is a wonderful thing, because local government is about people, about us, about ordinary people. And I think that if ordinary people have access to local protections, they are more likely to use those if they need them. They're more likely to have access to them if these protections are local. The other thing I want to mention briefly is the equity issue. Equity is about representation. And as you can tell, we are a remarkably diverse community. You see it here. But that diversity is not reflected in the hiring practices. I meant the business contracts. And I think that the goal of trying to achieve equity, as is stated in Article 2, is a worthy one. So I urge you to support Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have George Fletcher.
Not here, Mayor.
Okay. We have Marcus Toole. Are you here to speak for or against?
I speak for. The greatest value of this proposed ordinance is not in the specifics of the provisions, but the fact that if and when City Council passes it, you'll be making a statement about who we are as a community and what our values now are. Let me tell you about who we were and how it impacted me. In the early 70s, I was in first grade, and kids would exclude me from games at recess because they thought I was a sissy. They were reflecting the values of their parents. That was who we were. In the late 70s, my parents owned a beauty school, and a gay man came to school at their beauty school. He had been forced out of the military because he was gay, but my parents didn't know this. But about 3/4 through his course, he mentioned to one of the patrons that came to the beauty school to get their hair done that he had just had a commitment ceremony with his partner. And my parents expelled him on the spot, in front of the other students, in front of the customers, and it was a joke to everybody. And they bragged about it for years with their friends who also thought it was a joke. I, being gay, they didn't know it, was slaughtered through that emotionally. That was our value system. That's who we were as a community. In 2016, things changed a little bit. A young man was evicted from his home because his landlord found out he was gay. That got brought to us at the Blue Mile Committee by one of the local Blue Mile business owners. And when it happened, there was a unanimous gasp. And the woman who was chairing the committee at the time said, "Oh no, those are not our values. This is not our community." That was an improvement. City Council responded to that by making a proclamation that we favored diversity. But no laws were changed at the time. There was a political change in the mayor's office, and that was followed by the diversity, by the One Borough Commission being formed, and with a mandate of one of the things to propose policies. And then about a year ago, a little more than a year ago, Statesboro had its first Borough Pride event, its first gay pride event. That event drew way more people than anyone organizing it expected to. And the farmers market had a Pride Saturday at the same time. For the vendors at the farmers market, that was their biggest money-making Saturday of the entire 2019 season. And then that fall, the city of Statesboro doubled down and elected council members who had a record of being for diversity and inclusion. Today, you get to tell us who we are. We are a community of diversity and inclusion. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we have Mary, W-I-E-R-B-I-D-E-I. Mary? Okay. We have Catherine Fitch. Are you here to speak for or against?
I'm here to speak for. My name is Catherine Fitch, and my husband and I have lived in Bullitt County since 1996. We lived in Statesboro since 2007. We're small business owners, and we raised our daughter here. On behalf of my entire family, I would like to express our support for all sections of the Non-Discrimination and Equity Ordinance. Specifically, I would like to say that the provisions promoting non-discrimination in purchasing and contracts and giving a 6% vendor advantage to in-county minority and female-owned businesses is needed. Being a small business owner is hard. There are things that make it harder if you're a woman or a minority. Now, personally, this ordinance will not give a direct advantage to my business. My husband happens to be the majority owner. However, it is going to help other people in our community. And when our community and our neighbors are doing better because they have security in their jobs, in their housing, and in their businesses, we all do better. So I please urge you to pass this ordinance tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Lisa Moran. Lisa Moran.
Hey, that was the.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Right. Joe?
Yes.
Are you going to speak for or against, Joe?
For.
Right.
Okay, I actually left my notes, so this will be quick. But I'm here to speak as a college student in the community, and having a lot of friends in the LGBTQ plus community. I urge you all to vote for this because for someone like me who came here from Atlanta and was like, oh, it's a small town, you know, whatever, I'm in 4 years out. I came here, fell in love with the community. I might even stay, who knows. But, you know, for me, a straight white man, that's not a hard decision for me to make. Like, it's more about, like, money and all that. But for some of my friends, if this resolution was a no vote, they would think, well, they don't want me here. You know, I'm not going to be protected. So that's why they would leave, because they just don't feel welcome. And I think that's not representative of this city whatsoever. Sorry. I think we are much better than that, and just from the recent election we've had, we've shown that we are a very diverse community, and we're getting better representation. So that's kind of all I want to say about that. And the second thing is some of the comments I've seen on Facebook about all this with people talking about freedom of religion. Freedom of religion does not give you the right to weaponize your religion against anyone. And I think that's deplorable that people are doing that. So just to finish, please everyone vote yes. And thank you for all your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Holly Freeman, are you here to speak for or against?
For. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm a new resident of District 2. My partner and I, Justin, actually moved here from the county just a couple months ago because we realized that the city and the direction that the city's going represents our values. And we really wanted to be a part of that. Clearly this ordinance, we hope to maybe in the future open a business here. And I feel that this ordinance supports small business owners from diverse backgrounds. I'm really proud to live in a city with great leadership. I trust that you all will do the right thing. And I really also want to thank you for your leadership during this pandemic. I know it's been a really rough time. And thank you for your service. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the list, we have Jeremy Hart. Jeremy Hart. All right. Next, we have Sophie Bunce. Sophie Bunce. Negative. Ann Henderson. Ann Henderson.
Sophie Bunce.
Hold on. until we get to them. Okay, that's thoughts? Chief?
We haven't found Miss Sophie yet.
Okay, who, is that Bunce? Bunce?
Yeah, we haven't found Miss.
Okay, and so next we have Sophie Bunce. Okay, Sophie?
Sophie's against.
Okay, all right, so when we get to against, she can go then. Next we have Ann Henderson. Are you for or against?
I'm for.
Okay.
Good evening. My name is Ann Henderson. I was born right here in Statesboro, Georgia. I've lived here for the last 15 years, the second time. I know several people have quoted census data, so I'm going to quote it one more time. In 2012, the last time we have recorded census data, there was a total of 2,530 businesses in Statesboro. Guess how many were owned by women? 863, that's 34%. 801 owned by minorities, that's 32%, which does not reflect the spending of Statesboro. As our city manager, Charles Penny, delivered in September, 92% of our contracts, only 8% of our contracts, go to female and minority-owned businesses. I don't have to tell this group that there has been a struggle against racial and gender discrimination in this country since the beginning of time. I think you can tell from the makeup of this council that we've had enough. We have had enough. If the city cannot naturally grant women and minority business-owned contracts, then we have to legislate it. The city has had 217 years to do the right thing, and we haven't done it. So why do we expect that that's going to happen? Just because we wish that it happens. It's time to lift up women and minority-owned businesses. Let me remind you, the city, this ordinance is not asking that 50% of our spending go to women and minority-owned businesses. It's not asking that 32% go. It's asking that a mere 20% go to women and minority-owned businesses. We know that likely the other 80%, let me say that again, 80% will go, as it has in the past, mostly to non-minorities and non-women. Some have suggested that a reason not to support this ordinance is because we have a line in our city code that says we will not discriminate. Now, you and I know that the intent of that line is to not discriminate against minorities. To not discriminate against minorities. It's not to protect those that get protection everywhere. Everywhere we look. It is to protect minorities. The mission of the city of Statesboro is to provide the most responsive and progressive public services so that our residents, businesses, and visitors can enjoy the highest quality of life Statesboro has to offer. That means the highest quality for everyone, for minorities, for women, for everyone, not just the wealthy and the powerful. A city is not a business. We are not a business. The goal of a business is to make a profit. Is that the goal of a city? No, that is not the goal of a city. Yes, we want to be efficient with our spending, but it is not to make a profit. It is for the welfare and justice of its citizens, even if that comes at a cost for non-discrimination, even if it comes at a cost. So I encourage you to support our minority and women-owned businesses. Take care of each other, lift each other up, and our whole city will be lifted. And I encourage you to pass this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next we have Ted Bryan. Ted Bryan. Are you here to speak for or against?
For.
Good evening, everyone. I'm here to speak in support of all three sections of the bill, but I wanted to just point out that minority and female business enterprise buying preference, and I strongly support this initiative. All right. The concern about the provision, the concern that it may be unfair, all right, is sort of false. We always seem to allow those in power to determine what's fair. All right. It reminds me when I was a little kid. I played basketball with my older brother. He was a foot taller and weighed 40 more pounds. And he always said it was fair because we were on the same court with the same ball. Right? Fortunately, I was able to grow a little bit. And when we finally got the same height, we suddenly stopped playing. Right? When it really became fair. Right? When a group has been systematically discriminated against, we cannot suddenly decide that one day things are fair. Fair is making things right and not pretending that the nation, state, county, and city have not engaged in systematic discrimination for generations. A lot of students at Georgia Southern wear shirts that now say, do right. So, City Council, do right. Pass this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Well, we come to the end of that list. We have Ms. Sophie Bunce.
Mayor and council members, thank you for allowing me to speak. First of all, I want to say as a white person that I'm deeply grieved and repent for all of the injustices that white people have done to black people. And in my heart, this is something that grieves me very deeply. And yet I stand here as a Bible-believing Christian. And I, along with many that I know, have a real concern about what this ordinance might mean if it were passed. For example, could my belief systems, if I were to express them, be interpreted by some people as hate speech? For example, would it mean that pastors who would quote the words of Jesus saying that marriage should be between a man and a woman, would we be criminalized or penalized, or would we be considered ones that would come under, some kind of penalty because of this? And I see a lot of you shaking your heads, but is there anything written in this that would actually specifically protect us? And I know I speak for a lot of people, and so and maybe my ignorance, but it's a real fear and a real concern. And so I would ask you to at least look at what's written and then try to make sure that provisions for people like me, and I represent many, are covered. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know my name is Sophie. Okay, so we've come to the end of that list. That was for and against. Is there a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
All right, is there a second? All right, all those in favor? All right, we've closed the hearing. We'll now open this up for council discussion. Any discussion by council?
Okay.
Carried.
I appreciate all the people who came out to speak for and those who had concerns and are willing to share them. And I'm ready to vote on the ordinance.
All right, so with that being said.
Mayor, I do have just a couple of things and then I'll make the motion. Because I do want to reiterate the reason I initially in July at the second meeting brought this non-discrimination ordinance in front of the council. And as Mr. Toole mentioned, I too heard the story of the individual who was kicked out of their apartment simply for their, I believe the term is sexual orientation, is that correct? Due to their sexual orientation. And I found that as a person who comes from a very diverse college program, I've lived all over the country. I've had friends of all different shapes, colors, and sizes, and cultures. And I found it just strange that in this 21st century that was something that someone would have to deal with, having to move just because of who they're in love with. And I found that to be just confusing and unsettling, and which is why I brought it up, especially in the light of the Supreme Court ruling that came shortly before my my motion. And the reason in particular that I brought up section 1 was because lawsuits are expensive. And federal and state rules already allow us, somebody to sue, but suing and taking someone to court is by its very nature a confrontational situation. You got your lawyer, they got their lawyer, and they're gonna duke it out in court, and one person's gonna win. That's how court is set up. And so it was important to me to bring that extra step of mediation in so that we could get the two parties to sit down. And as I did with Reverend Hartman just earlier today, I think I got that right, didn't I? Okay, good. Phew. Didn't want to make that mistake twice. But I sat down with Reverend Hartman and we talked about the differences that we had, and we realized that we were not as far on the ends of the spectrum as we may have thought. So the section 1 was important to me. And as I sit here, not only this week, but over the last couple of months as we've discussed this, I've heard the concerns of our citizens, and I've listened. You know, that's what so many of us don't do is listen and try to hear. And I will be supporting all provisions of this ordinance. Now I'm going to make the motion to do so. The only indulgence that I would ask a council, and Councilwoman Barr and I discussed this, and I apologize for not mentioning it to the other members of council, I just honestly didn't have time. The only thing I would ask is that for section 2, we include a small provision, which I've checked with Kane, and this will not affect Councilwoman Chambers, us moving forward today. This will not, it's a small change. And that being that we reauthorize this section every 4 years, because I think it's important that it's easy to pass an ordinance and just push it aside and fail to analyze the effects of that ordinance. And I think that by requiring council to readdress this every 4 years and look at it again, we can make adjustments. If this isn't enough, maybe we need to do other things. Maybe we need to strengthen it. Maybe we need to make modifications. But I think it would be important to keep, this has clearly been a sensitive issue for many of our citizens, whether they live in the city or whether they live in our community. And I think it's important to keep this issue, not just shove it aside like we do a master plan or a community development plan. And if you go up to engineering, you'll see all those old plans up on a shelf. So the only thing I would ask is that we include a small provision that every 4 years, right before budget time, I believe, Kane, we talked about June 30th, 2024, and every 4 years thereafter, revisiting this and saying, hey, are we doing enough to help those who have been historically disadvantaged? So with that being said, I'm going to make the motion to approve all 3 of these sections with the small caveat that just section 2 have a reauthorization clause that sets the initial date for renewal on June 30th, 2024. And that way we can bring it before council, and if there's any, maybe we need to strengthen it. If there's any adjustments need to be made, they would be made at that time. So that is my motion.
Mr. Mayor, may I ask that Kane read us the proposed addition so we can all hear it? Is it prepared and ready?
I don't have it in codified form. What I could do is write something along the lines which that I'd forward to all mayor and council members, saying that the provisions of Article 2 must be, or of Section 2 Article 2, I'm sorry, must be evaluated. Let me put this in Section 8058, that they be evaluated every 4 years, beginning on July 1st, by July 1st.
June 30th.
Well, yes. Do you want to say 2024?
Only because July 1st is the start of the new fiscal year. June 30th is the end of the fiscal year.
We say 25.
Excuse me?
We say 25. Because then we have a full 4 years.
Okay.
And that at that point, council would evaluate the campaign for equity and review of contracting provisions, that we would review all relevant data.
Would be a great time for one borough to make a presentation, to relook at the success. Maybe that 92% number gets worse, I don't know. But to relook at it and analyze it, and let's keep this at the forefront so we don't go backwards and we move forward.
I mean, as long as you don't.
I have no other changes whatsoever.
Go ahead.
Yeah, well.
It was your turn?
Y'all still talking about the same thing, go ahead and let's finish that.
Oh, okay. I don't have a problem with it as long as we don't make it less stringent, meaning that we go back and say, okay, we want to reverse this and we're going to go back to the original 3% that we're giving. I'm not for that. Now, if we're going to keep moving that number up for minorities until we get to a 50%, cool beans. But if we're going to, come back and reconvene in the next 4 years and say we're going to, we don't feel like this is fair, we're going to go back down some numbers, no, that's where I disagree. But if we're going to go up, cool beans. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yes.
Does everyone follow what I'm saying? Maybe I can put it in clear terms. If we're going to go down on the percentage that we're offering to minority-owned businesses when we reconvene these 4 years, I am not for it. But when we reconvene in 4 years and we're offering, okay, this is just not enough, maybe we need to go up some, then I am for it. Can we add that also? Can that be a part of it?
Let me say what my concern is. We've seen this before with the Voting Rights Act. Every so often, the bid comes up where the Voting Rights Act has to be renewed. And what we've seen historically is that is a complete disaster. Okay? And so 4 years, we can come back and revisit this without having to reauthorize this section. And what we have to be abundantly clear on is this. It's taken us 217 years to get us to this point. It should be the responsibility of anyone who sits in these seats to make sure we are maintaining our efforts towards making this community as a whole a more equitable and fair and inviting place. So I think that is a slippery slope to want to come back and renew this every 4 years. Because what we've seen with the Voting Rights Act is that is a complete failure. That's what my concern is. If we're going to pass this, let's go ahead, pass it, and make sure that we are pushing to move our community forward as it relates to this. But to put it there where we run the risk of this not being reauthorized because of the political sway of a council, then I think that puts the people of this community in a serious situation.
Change the word from reauthorize to revisit. Would that be enough, King?
I believe so. The council shall revisit the provisions of Article 2.
Just 2?
Yes, of just.
Not 3, right, not 1.
Just the provisions.
We're not changing the non-discrimination ordinance, we're not changing equity, just that particular one. Because, we need to see what the effects of these decisions are and get a report and have an analysis, and whoever our city manager is at that time. I don't know, Charles, you gonna be here in 4 years?
Yeah.
Mayor said so,
So 2 questions. It would not be, if with that revision, it would not be sunsetted and we had to reauthorize it. It would be a matter of it just come up for review and discussion.
Because so often these ordinances get pushed aside and we forget about them.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the housing authority. When's the last time we appointed somebody to the housing authority? 1992.
Okay.
And they wonder why the mayor moving so fast. It's been 30 years.
That's all I'm saying. This is as important as it is to our citizens.
Yeah,
We need to require future councils. No matter who sits up here in 4 years, we need to require them to revisit this and relook at the numbers and see what can be done to continue to move this community forward.
So my second question, did I understand correctly, this is not substantive, we can vote on it, it can pass today with this amendment, or are we putting it off if we do?
Absolutely. This is not a substantive
Yeah.
change. This is just saying that in 4 years, the council revisits it upon looking at the results of Campaign for Equity and reports based on MFB contracting by the city.
Okay.
And we're moving forward.
We just move forward with that change.
Restate your motion.
Again, I move to authorize all three of these with the requirement that the city council revisit this section 2. So this clause only applies to section 2. 1 and 3 are in there. And Charles, I'm still gonna go with 2024 for the first one. That's right.
Okay. All right, so we have our first.
And then every 4 years thereafter.
Okay, we have our first motion. Venus, John had the floor next.
I have a question before we go.
Go ahead.
Between the mask and Zoom, it's a little delay, and I just want to make sure that I'm on the same page with you guys. Are we saying that we are going to revisit this in 4 years, but we will not be lowering the number?
We're revisiting it so that we can examine to see if it is working.
Correct.
We're not setting any limits on whether it goes up or down.
But would the number be going lower? Is that an option at that point?
When we revisit it, whether it's us or another body, they have the option to either, to make adjustments based on whether it's performing well or not performing well.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, but John had, he had the floor. So John.
Thank you. First of all, let me say that these are my beliefs. I'm not speaking for anybody else but me. And I've written it out because I tend to ramble. So I'm just going to read right off. Dozens of times I have made this statement without hesitation. I will never help or hurt someone simply because of their race, black or white, man or woman, or for any other reason. I discussed this with Mayor McCullough at length on January 5th or 6th, just before our first meeting in 2020. He is well aware of my stance on non-discrimination, no discriminating. Again, I do not speak for anyone but myself, and I can only address the policies of my beloved city government, the government that I've been elected to for the last 10 years. I've never voted for anything that would discriminate against anybody for any reason, except not being a local contractor. So we do discriminate against people who are local.
Yeah, we like our people to work.
We like to keep local, thank you. Discrimination of any kind is not tolerated at any level or department at the city of Statesboro. City of Statesboro does not discriminate when hiring, promoting, or any other treatment of our employees. The city of Statesboro does not discriminate in bidding processes or any relationship with potential or existing vendors, contractors, or entities doing any business with the city of Statesboro. If there is any form of discrimination within the city of Statesboro, I expect the city manager to bring it up immediately. Have somebody fired and do something about it then. I am appalled that anyone or any entity would even imply that we have discriminated in any way for the last 10 years that I've been on here. We do not discriminate in any way. If anybody can see that we do, please bring it forward, and we'll remedy it. I guarantee you we will fix that. I love everybody, and I show it every day to everyone that I see. And I do not discriminate. And I cannot vote for this ordinance because it discriminates. This ordinance has many, many wonderful things in it that I am wholly in favor of, but I cannot vote for them because of the discrimination. I love everyone, and I show it. And I hope that everyone in the city of Statesboro can get up every morning, and everyone that you see, just be nice to them, be kind. You don't have to tell them you love them. Just smile. It doesn't happen to me all the time. People are, the atmosphere of the whole country is anger. And I feel it, anger towards me. And I don't know what I've done to ask for it, because I smile at everyone in a sweet way. And I'm just saying, it starts here in Statesboro. It starts with you, it starts with when you wake up in the morning, whether or not you're gonna be nice to somebody, or just walk by. That's what I have to say.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
And he shared his feelings.
And I share my feelings.
All right, any further discussion by council? All right, Senator.
So, wait, hold on, so we're gonna revisit in 2025?
He said 24.
Okay, so why not 25? We give
You
it a
know,
full year.
2024 is divided by 4.
Huh?
Because it's divided by 4. And we'll do
I
it.
thought he said that 25 would be a
If you want to do 2025.
2025.
All right.
Make
Thank
the
you.
motion for
Thank you,
25. Leah, you got the motion for 25?
Yes.
Okay. All right, with that being said, is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Dennis?
Still not sure about the revisiting in 2025. Because if it can be lowered, I'm not in agreement with that when we revisit it.
Venus, it could be lowered by any council in the future at any point in time. We could remove this entire provision at the next meeting if we wanted to. My point was that sometimes when we pass these ordinances, they get put on a shelf and we forget about them. And this is clearly important enough to our community that it needs to be kept in the forefront, not just today, but in the future. And so when I say revisit it, that means we need to get a report. We need to and require our city manager to do a report. Require, if one borough is still functioning, require them to present us with an analysis of the spending and all those kinds of things, because it's easy to pass these ordinances and just put them aside. And clearly, for the future, that's what
I totally agree with. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm not.
It's on you, Dennis.
I totally agree that it does need to be revisited. In 4 years, 1 year, 2 years, I agree with what you're saying, how things can get, put on the shelf and we don't look at them again. But I'm still uncertain about that part that it can change and go lower. That worries me.
We can do that at the next meeting.
Dennis, the thing, whether we hear or not, any council that comes after us has the ability to change it. And so there's nothing that we can do to put a measure that's going to stop that. But what we are saying is that in that time frame, we'll revisit it. If it's working, then we want to make sure we're taking the best attributes of that and continue on that path. If we see that there's things that need to be tweaked, then we can tweak it then. It's just, the purpose of this is just for us to be able to make sure that we are doing that thing that this whole package is all about. And that's working to making our community more equitable for everyone across the board.
Correct.
Okay.
We got a serious delay. Okay, so do you want to vote in the affirmative? How do you want to cast your vote?
I mean, I have voted either way, so everyone voted, so it's fine.
Still got to vote?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yay.
Okay.
Mayor, I'm sorry to interrupt. Who was the second?
John.
John. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, so we'll move down to agenda item.
No, just because I seconded it, doesn't mean, you have to ask for names.
All those for nay?
Nay.
Okay, so we have a 4-1 vote.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm confused.
Everybody voted. John seconded it, but he's voted.
Voted again, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
All right,
Thank
good. Now, Statesboro, we get to move down to agenda item 7. And agenda item 7 is second reading and consideration of a motion to approve ordinance 2020-10, ordinance revising chapter 58-9 to require public hearings to be held for renaming of existing roads by mayor and council. Council, if we could do a point of pleasure, I think we're all on the same page with this. Do we need for Kane to go through this, or can we just do a straight up or down vote on this?
Negative.
Okay, you want?
Negative, we don't need to have them go through it.
Okay, all right, if we have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? All right, let it show that agenda item 7 has passed. We'll move down to agenda item 8, which is the second reading, consideration of a motion to approve ordinance 2020-11, or ordinance revising chapter 6-17D to allow city manager to, or designee to review and approve applications for open containers. I think there may be some discussion here, so Kane, if you will.
Mayor and council, this is brought before y'all just, and like it says in the agenda memo, this simply moves the determination of granting the exemptions from council to the city manager. However, it still allows for council consideration should the city manager or designee not approve that exemption for a container.
Okay, any discussion by council?
I feel the same way I did last time. I believe that that is something that city council should approve of. That's the reason I was elected by many folks, and that's the way I feel.
All right. All right, any further discussion by council? All right, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
I got one.
Aye.
All right, and all those opposed?
Nay.
All right, let's show that agenda item 8 has passed with 4-1 vote. We'll move down to agenda item 9, public hearing and consideration of a motion to approve application CUV 20-09-01. James Melton requests a conditional use variance from Article 8 of the Statesboro zoning ordinance for 0.17 acres of property located at 22 Bullock Street to utilize a shipping container for additional storage and refrigeration facilities for a catering business in the CBD zoning district. Is there a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Kathy, if you will.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The applicant, James Melton, has requested a conditional use variance to allow for the placement of a 20-foot shipping container on property located at 22 Bullock Street to utilize the storage and refrigeration with the catering business to be located on the property. The catering business is an allowed use at this location due to the commercial retail zoning designation. However, the placement of the container is not, hence the request for the conditional use variance. You can see on the slide here that the parcel, which is outlined in red, is at the corner of College and Bullock Street, and it's kitty corner to the West District. The next slide is the future land use plan map, and that shows a consistency of uses. It's in the proposed downtown area. The current zoning map shows the parcel in the commercial retail district, which is consistent use. And then these slides, the top one shows the subject site. The bottom one shows adjacent property. The next slide shows property to the west, and then the bottom slide shows property to the east. At the regularly scheduled meeting of the Planning Commission, the Commission voted 6-0 to recommend approval of the conditional use variance as requested under the following enumerated conditions. 1, the container must meet the color and material standards to align with the regulations found in the DSDA design standards. 2, the container must meet the allocated setbacks of the commercial retail zoning district. 3, approval of the conditional use variance does not grant the right to conduct renovations to the facility. All renovations must be completed through the building permit application process. And finally, upon closure or relocation of the business, the container must be removed from the site, and the site must be restored to its form prior to placement. Those are the conditions, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Kathy. Is there anyone here to speak for the request?
I didn't have anything to say, sir. I just was wondering in case y'all had any questions.
Okay, if you want to, we'll put a pin in, and then if council have a question for you, we'll follow back up.
Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate you being here.
Yes, sir.
All right. Is there anyone here to speak against the request? right, seeing that there is none, we'll ask for a motion to close the hearing.
So moved. Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
All right, thank you, and so it is now closed. Any discussion by council?
When it says this is a shipping container, is this a TEU right off of one of the ships?
Right, I still haven't purchased it yet, I'm shopping, sorry. I still haven't purchased it yet, so I'm still shopping, I just wanted to make sure, before I get into that, but yeah, I am gonna put siding on it to match or I'm gonna use hardwood pine that I've harvested from within the house itself. So it'll match, what's on the property, the house or the barn, which is, I don't think you can really see it in this picture, but I plan on, having a big, it won't look like a ship.
Or like a
It's have the shape of it, but I'm gonna just make it look good, so.
Making sure, thank you.
Awesome.
Any further discussion by council?
And you said it's just for storage and refrigeration
Yes, ma'am.
or catering business?
Yes, ma'am.
What's the name of the catering?
Scratch Made Catering?
Scratch Made.
Okay. And what district would that catering business be in?
Statesboro?
Where in Statesboro?
Well,
Is it gonna be on Bullock Street?
well, actually, I'm already in business. I've been in business about 3 years, but
Okay.
we're moving from outside the city limits into, like I said, we purchased the property, and so it's gonna be my new commissary for
Oh, okay.
production.
That Bullock Street is District 2, so I was just, kind of wondering where you was gonna go.
She wanna get a sample. She wanna get a sample.
Right around the corner, so
Yeah, she wanna get a sample. That's what that's leading
Throw in
to.
an extra tree.
20 samples for y'all, 20 samples.
Now, just make sure that meal is worth less than $25.
No
I
problem.
want to be violating state ethics laws.
No problem.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
With that being said, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you.
Aye.
All right. All right, we'll move to agenda item 10. I can't see Venus no more, okay, there she go. We'll move to agenda item 10, which is the public hearing and consideration of a motion to approve application SC 20-09-02. Joseph Crop requests a special exception for Article 5 of the Statesboro zoning ordinance for 0.52 acres of property located at 108 South Zetaron Avenue to utilize the entire structure as a mental health practice in the R15 zoning district. Is there a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, Kathy, if you would.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The applicant, Dr. Joseph Crop, has requested a special exception to allow for the property located at 106 South Zetaron Avenue to be utilized as a mental health facility, which is not an allowed use under the R15, which is a single-family residential zoning category. The business may currently operate via a conditional use granted specifically to Dr. Crop in 1997 with restrictions. Granting of the special exception would allow the property to be utilized for medical purposes in perpetuity and bring the property into greater alignment with the surrounding uses on South Zetaron Avenue. There was a special exception granted in 1997, but it just went with Dr. Crop, and he's now moving. So he's requesting a special exception to go with the land so that anyone in the future may use this structure for a medical office. So that's the distinction here. And the site is shown in red on South Zetaron. The future land use plan shows this as it's split half in the neighborhood, proposed neighborhood center area, and then the other an established residential neighborhood. The existing zoning, as we mentioned, is R15, which is residential use. The picture on the top is the subject property. The picture on the bottom is the rear property, and I bring your attention to the fencing on here because we do have a condition addressing the condition of this fencing, okay? The house, the red roof is to the north of the property, and the bottom picture shows the structure which is to the south of the property. At the regularly scheduled meeting of the Planning Commission, the Commission voted 6-0 to recommend the approval of the special exception as requested under the following enumerated conditions.
1, approval of the special exception to only allow for the additional use of a medical facility at this location, in addition to the established provisions of the currently held zoning district. 2, approval of the special exception does not grant the right to conduct renovations to the facility, or renovations must be completed through the building permit application process. 3, the rear of the property is to be used only for parking as well as for ingress and egress purposes. 4, no other buildings are to be erected on the property. And 5, the rear fence fronting on Donaldson Street must be repaired and painted. Those are the conditions, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right. Anybody here to speak for?
Yes, sir. Thank you. I would just like to point out that I've been using this property since 1997 as to provide mental health services. I've been a practicing psychologist in Statesboro for a couple of years longer than that. And last time I was in this room asking for a conditional use variance, my hair was brown. It's been a while. But we've been operating continuously as a mental health facility, and I am getting ready to retire. Hopefully, I want to sell my practice and the building, and my hope is that it continues to provide excellent mental health care to the people, not only of Statesboro, Moran County, but we serve lots of counties with our practice.
Thank you. Questions that come out of the council discussion? Is there anyone here to speak against? Seeing that there is none, is there a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, let us show that agenda item 10. My bad. Let me show that we are closed. Is anybody, does we have any council discussion?
Yeah, if we were to approve,
I just meant to say, I think you said the address was 106 South Cedar, or it's 108 South Cedar. Just to make sure the minutes are.
I think he has a question though.
if we were to pass this, would that mean that this building could be only used as a mental health facility? I mean, like, what if somebody came along and wanted to give you twice for your business and wanted to make it a residence? Because I know you got a kitchen in the back and it's a beautiful house. Does this limit it to being a mental?
No, also the existing zoning stays with it, which is the R15.
Gotcha, okay, gotcha. Just didn't want to limit your possibility.
I appreciate that.
That's it.
Okay, any further discussion by council? All right, seeing that there is none, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. All right, let us show this agenda item 10 is passed. We'll move down to agenda item 11. Public hearing consideration of a motion to approve application RZ 2009-04. Jerry Jennings is requesting zoning map amendment for 13 acres of property located on Highway 301 North, aka East Parish Street, to construct two 56,000 square foot warehouse buildings for commercial use on property currently in the highway-oriented commercial and R4 high-density residential zoning districts. Is there a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? All right, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The applicant, Jerry Jennings, requests a zoning map amendment to combine the two existing zoning classifications of HOC, which is highway-oriented commercial, and R4, which is high-density residential, to just the highway-oriented commercial zoning designation on a 13-acre property located on East Parish Street, also called Highway 301 North, to develop two 56,000 square foot commercial warehouses. The warehouses would be developed to house multiple tenants for varied commercial uses. The current split zoning of the property does not have sufficient space within the HOC zoning for the development to be located. So, the outline shows the proposed site. The future land use plan shows this area to be used in the future for residential redevelopment, which is a little somewhat inconsistent with the proposed warehouse use. However, because the surrounding area is really light industrial at this point, we felt it was a consistent use. And the current zoning map shows the split, as you can see. The pink is the R4, and the yellow is the highway-oriented commercial. And so he's requesting that the whole site be converted into highway-oriented commercial. The subject site it's undeveloped, it's forested at the moment at the top. The bottom shows the property across the street. The top on this one shows property to the east, and then the property on the bottom is a continuation of that very long strip of property. It's the western end of it. And again, you can see the forested area. At the regularly scheduled meeting of the Planning Commission, the Commission voted 6-0 to recommend the approval of the zoning map amendment as requested under the following enumerated conditions. 1, approval of the zoning map amendment does not allow the right to begin development on the site. All development must be permitted and approved prior to construction. 2, sufficient buffering should be implemented into the design of the warehouses to ensure adherence to the requirements of the highway-oriented commercial zoning district. That is my presentation, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Is there anyone here to speak for the request?
Yes, sir. My name is Jeremy Hart. I'm with UC Engineering Services here in Statesboro. I'm here as well as Mr. Steve Rushing, representing our client, Mr. Jennings. So if you have any questions about the proposed plan or anything, just let me know.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate you being here. All right. Is there anyone here to speak against the request?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, I am Steve Rushing. I'm an attorney here in town with Talby Rushing, Snipes, Marsh, and Hodgin at 12 Sebald Street, just a block away. My client is Mr. Jerry Jennings. I won't keep you long because I think the staff's done a good job at examining this, and our engineers done a great job with that.
You speaking for?
I'm for. Yes.
Okay, yeah, because I had asked him about speaking against, and he jumped up.
Oh, no.
And when you said you're the attorney, I was like, this is not working out.
You fire me immediately.
You're fired.
Good.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We think clearly that the standards do support the approval of the application. Just wanted to point out a few matters I think stand to be focused upon. The time that the property has been vacant, we believe it's been vacant since before the city of Statesboro was established. We cannot find any signs that there was any development on there previously. So we think it's about time to bring it into something positive. Our owner, developer, is Mr. Jerry Jennings. He is local. You can call him up at his house here in the community. You don't have to call some corporation in Atlanta. We do think that this will convert the property to a tax generator with low government services burden, unlike perhaps a high-density residential, which we're looking to shift from. We expect to be a very good neighbor to the church, to the, I guess that would be the north. I had the privilege of closing that purchase for the church some years ago. They purchased it from the same owner that is selling this property now to Mr. Jennings. In fact, I did want to point out that in the HOC zone at section 1101I, that churches are permitted use in the HOC. So it's anticipated that we could be in close proximity. This Mr. Jennings is also the same owner as the warehouse project across the street, across Paris Street. They have worked very hard to make that warehouse productive. Those of you that have been around a while on the commission, it was originally of course, way back when I was a kid, it was a warehouse, tobacco warehouse, but then it sat dormant for a while, and then Mr. Jennings and his folks took it over and tried a flea market for a few years. Then after that, the trampoline park, you may remember, and now it's back to a warehouse again, and that's where it has become its highest use and best use. In fact, They've leased it out, and there's a business there that's looking to put a little assembly line in there, possibly bringing up to 30 jobs to our community. So that is why we're kind of focused on this warehouse use. It will not increase the population density as the R4 possibly would. I think the future land use map was, we saw what was kind of been going on there now. So we would ask that you do accept the city staff's recommendation and the planning commission's recommendation to approve this application.
Thank you. All right. With that being said, is there anyone else to speak for or against? Not seeing that there was none, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Any council discussion?
Kathy, I do have just a concern. What are we going to do, or what are the requirements from a buffer standpoint, since everything behind that, you got the church, but then everything behind that is a residential area.
Right.
So the last thing we want to do is clear it all out, and then you just, those houses now have an unimpeded view of 301, which is not exactly the most attractive road on the planet. So that being said, what is the buffer requirement in order to ensure that the folks that have residential property along Joyce Street and on Raymond Street, et cetera, continues to be you understand, looking for a vegetative buffer or something along those lines, so that way they can still have a residential feel back there and not feel like they've been moved right onto the highway.
Absolutely, and we were very cognizant of that and did put that in as a condition, that there must be buffers there.
Well, like you said, this is just a rezoning, and so any kind of plan that they're going to come up with later would outline such a buffer.
Absolutely, and we're very cognizant of that.
And that would come back to us? Or at least would have to go through your office?
It would go through us, and we will make very sure that there is a buffer there.
Okay.
I share your concern.
I'm sure you guys will be fine. I just wanted to make sure that that was said out loud.
Yep.
Can I say one thing for that as well?
Tell us who you are.
Thank you, thank you. Also wanted to point out too that we are proposing.
Tell me who you are.
Jeremy with EMC Engineering Services.
Sorry.
All right, I just want to also point out that we're only proposing to clear the trees needed for the internal roadways and the warehouses themselves and leave everything else that will actually add to that buffer.
Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I've got a question. I'm having trouble getting focused where this is. Is this just south of the sheriff's department, or is it cut out around the sheriff's department?
Just south of the sheriff's department on the same side of the road. In between the sheriff's department and this piece of property is some DOT property where they store
So
DOT equipment.
what is cut out around is now occupied as a church?
No, there's a little gas station there. Or a little auto, isn't that right? Little auto repair shop or something.
I thought you said something about the trampoline park. I was there.
That's that white building, or the
Okay.
white roof there across the street, and then the church is right there.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay.
Thank you.
So there's no more discussion by council. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, we'll move down. Dennis got a good delay on this, right? We move down to agenda item 12. Y'all take care. We move down to agenda item 12, consideration of a motion to approve the purchase of 6 new patrol cars, including upfitting and required equipment. Council, do we need discussion on this prior to approval?
I'd just like to know what they're buying. Are they getting more Dodges, or are you going with more Explorers?
Forwards.
More Fords? More Explorers?
Forwards, Explorers.
Okay.
Just curious.
Okay. All right, Mr. Penny?
Because that's the purchasing, that's the state purchasing
That's
thing.
coming off state contract, and I believe Chief and them are finding that the police package on some of the cars are not really holding up very well. And the Ford Explorers are right now providing us better service, a little bit more rugged. We'll say that we're fortunate that we can get these. I think they'll actually have some already on the lot. But with the amount of money that we do have, Chief is gonna be able to upfit these 6, and he doesn't know this, but I'm here to tell you. We also purchased 4 others earlier that we thought we were gonna be able to buy out of the CARES Act, but we'll be able to also upfit those vehicles out of some of these funds as well.
Good deal.
So we do recommend, this was included, these vehicles were included in the budget that you approved.
Yeah.
However, what we typically do, we ask our departments to hold until the end of the first quarter of the year before we start actually making capital purchases. So it's been more traditional that these things would come to council for you to authorize the purchase of them, but they were already approved in the budget. So we do recommend that we move forward with the acquisition of police cars, 6 police cars.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All right. Any further discussion by council? Seeing that there's no further discussion by council, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, so we saw your mouth, Dennis. All right, so we'll go to agenda item 13, consideration of motion to reject all bids for the West Main Street Drainage Improvement Project. Mr. Kenny, could you give us a little bit of insight on this?
Yeah, Mayor, members of the council, that project came in a couple of $100,000 above the estimated cost. And so after talking with the low bidder, we believe it'd probably be better to give us an opportunity to reject the bid so we can make some adjustments to what we were trying to do, and we think we'll probably get it back within the budget to rebid it. So we recommend rejecting those bids.
Trying to save us some money.
Yeah, I'm gonna spend it the next time.
I know. Any discussion by council? Seeing that there's none, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Let us show that agenda item. We got you, Dennis.
Good job, Dennis.
Raise a hand.
We'll move down to agenda item 14, consideration of a motion to award the East Main Street and Packing House Road sidewalk improvements contract to McLendon Enterprises Incorporated in the amount of $1,701,253.50. The project will be paid for out of 2018 T-SPOS funds. Mr. Penny.
Mayor, members of the council, as I just shared with you, the previous bid came a couple $100,000 over bid. This one came about $800,000 over bid. However, we were working with some estimates that were probably a couple of years old.
Okay.
And so when you look at the bids that we did receive, all of them were, this was the lowest bid, and they were going up. So we could easily probably do part of the project for the $900,000, but we wouldn't have a completed project. We have the funds available in the T-SPOS. We would recommend, I don't think it's gonna get any cheaper, that we move forward with the project and that you award the bid to, I think it's McLendon, for $1.7 million to get that project done.
All right, thank you. Any discussion by council?
Yeah, I'm just curious, you mentioned the, what is it? The pedestrian beacon. Can you tell me where that pedestrian beacon is gonna be?
I'm gonna let,
And what is a pedestrian beacon?
assistant handle that one. Now you get beyond my.
So it'll be crossing East Main Street, Highway 24, between Coach Lee Hill Boulevard and Packing House. I'm not sure the exact location that it's going to be at.
Because I mean, those two roads don't line up, so.
That's right.
There's gotta be, which side of the road on East Main is that sidewalk gonna be? No, I'm sorry.
I believe it's
On
the north side.
Okay, in front of the church there then.
That's right.
I got you. Yeah,
I think it's
so
more
in front of the
conducive
church
on
and
that
along Pepper Ridge and.
And it'll connect better with Packing House Road, and this will be a sidewalk down the entirety of Packing House Road.
Right, but I was just curious where it's gonna, because there's kind of a hill and blind spot in there, so I was just, I mean, it's a great spot to put, because we got a lot of kids that walk up and down Packing House Road and Gruber Homes, Fox Ridge, Aikens, what's that little subdivision back there? So there's a ton of people that live on there, and I mean, we already got like the little cow path where everybody's been walking Madison Meadows.
right.
So, yeah, I mean, a lot of kids walk to the high school, so it's just like well, now Coach Lee Hill Road, but, you know, that was a huge improvement. It got kids off the street, and so this will do the same. I was just curious where. So you haven't decided exactly where that beacon's gonna go just yet?
I believe the engineers have, but I don't recall
Okay,
exactly what
I just
it
didn't
said.
see it, so. Thanks.
So it really is a beacon, like a beacon.
It'll be a flashing light.
Okay.
It's not like the thing on 301, is it?
I'm not sure.
The red bird, or whatever they call that thing? What do they call that crossing?
A hawk.
A hawk? Yeah, it was a bird-related
It's an
thing.
acronym for something.
That was close.
It ain't done.
We recommend it.
I recommend it too. I'll make a motion.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, let it show that it passed unanimously. We'll move down to agenda item 15, consideration of a motion to award the Aikens Boulevard construction contract to Mill Creek Construction in the amount of $1,398,401.27. Mr. Benny.
Mayor and council, if you remember, I think it was back in February, you approved an agreement with us working with Georgia Southern University for the extension of Aiken Boulevard. And this is that work that's to be done. Mill Creek actually came in under budget.
Okay.
The estimate, came under the estimate. The estimate was about $1.7 million, and they're coming in at 1.3.
Okay.
We recommend award of the contract to Mill Creek, and also just mention that Mill Creek had done the original work, extending up the register and Tormentor Way and all that. So there was probably some economy of scale there with them doing that work. So we recommend that you award to Mill Creek for $1.3 million.
Thank you. All right, any discussion by council?
This is the last piece before Publix comes, right? Man, I can never get him to commit to nothing.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. All right, we'll move down to agenda item 16, agenda item 15 is passed. We have a presentation by Police Chief Mike Whitehead regarding public safety in the community.
I can do that for you.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. Thank you for having me up. My understanding was that at the last meeting, Councilman asked for a presentation on about the last 10 years of crime statistics and also to understand my philosophy of policing, so I'll address that. I know the evening is dragging on, and I will try to be efficient and answer any questions you might have. So you saw some of these numbers in February at the annual report, but I've gone back about 7 years, so some of these charts might look familiar. I went back and plugged in the previous 3 years. Maybe you can just help me. So this graph gets a little bit crazy with the colors, so hopefully the ones that you have in front of you can follow along more easily. That blue line along the bottom, again, 10 years of the data. Those are our homicide numbers. The next color up, the red color is rapes. You see both of those numbers have stayed within reason, relatively consistent with each other for a decade. Robbery is the gray line. You can see that there was a tick up in 2019, but you might recall that in 2019 we started reporting NIBRs as opposed to UCR, and the one big drawback of the National Incident-Based Reporting System is that we have to count all the crimes that occur as opposed to just the most serious crime at an event. So if we have a home invasion robbery and something is stolen, then we would report that previously as a robbery. Now it's a robbery and a theft that gets reported for national purposes, if that makes sense. So we would expect that to be one of those numbers that we might see a little bit of an uptick on. The yellow number is a little bit concerning. That's aggravated assaults. That's anytime somebody uses a deadly weapon to commit a crime against another person. Some of that is victim specific, and it depends on how many victims we can identify at a crime scene sometimes that can address that. In 2019, you might remember at the beginning of 2019, we had 11 victims in one shooting. None of them were hit, but all of them became victims for reporting purposes, and so those numbers, statistics being what they are. I do have the numbers this year. I didn't put them on the chart because the year's not complete. I want to compare apples to apples. But Robbery is down 40% so far in 2020 over 2019. And aggravated assault, I'm happy to say, is down 22% so far this year. Now, some of that we're getting a little bit of a benefit from the COVID lockdown. Like, we had very little crime for about 2 months. Calls for service stayed up, but serious crime really dropped. Now, you remember I was here, I think in June, we talked about a spate of shootings that had occurred. Not all those shootings equate to an aggravated assault if we can't identify a victim. So if somebody's shooting a gun off in the air, we don't identify a victim, that doesn't count as an ag assault. But firearms-related aggravated assaults, to the end of September last year we had 19, to the end of September this year we've had 18. So that number has actually stayed fairly consistent, even though we had a pretty rough June. I think did I skip one? Is there a property? Oh, okay. So property crime, so this blue chart, or this chart, blue represents thefts for the last 10 years. Theft includes shoplifting, and so that kind of drives our numbers. You can barely see that there's a little tiny orange bar for each year. That's arsons. We really don't have much of an issue with that, generally speaking. And then motor vehicle theft is almost difficult to read on this chart as well. But it just shows you that for those 7 UCR crimes that we track, theft is what drives all those numbers as a problem for us. This is really good news, I think. Burglary has consistently been trending down for the last decade. Of course, burglary is the unauthorized trespass of somebody else's property with the intention to commit another crime therein. Yes, sir.
That's what I was getting.
Yeah. So generally you think of burglary as somebody kicking in an apartment door and stealing a TV set. That is generally burglary. Most of the time what we find is in these apartment complexes where they're selling, they're renting 3 bedrooms to 3 strangers, and one of them goes into somebody else's room and takes their Xbox. That's a burglary, right? And but it's just one of those things we're happy to see trending down. Overall UCR crime, again, these are those 7 crimes that we track. So homicide, ag assault, robbery, motor vehicle theft, rape, and robbery. These are all of those numbers put together. Again, you can see last year we ticked up a little bit, but that's, again, that 2019 we expected to have a bump because 6 months of that we were reporting under NIBRs, and so we're double counting some offenses that previously we would not have. But you can see compared to like 2012, 2013, we're not at that level.
If I may, Chief, that's extra, it's really an extra good sign because our population is going up. So we got population going up and crime coming down at the same time.
That's right. There are a lot of factors.
Which means it's even.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about how, what is it that drives crime, and there's so many factors. You talk about housing density, we talk about, all those things drive calls for service. Some of that's definitely crime related as well. So you might remember this last November, some of you were on the council. Lane, can you help me with that? I put this together. This is comparing, so it's one thing to say, well, we had 1,000 thefts or we had whatever. How does that compare us to the rest of the world? We can look at crime rates, again, statistics being what they are, crime rates based on 100,000 population. We obviously don't have 100,000 population, so then it gets extrapolated through math. But as you can see on this chart of violent crime by rate, I compared it to the other communities across the United States that compete with the university in the Sun Belt Conference to see how we're doing. On this particular chart, this is violent crime. That would be robbery, homicide, rape, aggravated assault. We're second lowest on the chart. We're the orange bar down near the bottom. Boone, North Carolina, statistically safer, and then you can see some of those other communities are really struggling. So I think that's good news for us relative to those. And I never want to say that any victim of a crime, that's good news that they were 1 of 5 or 1 of 7, but the good news is statistically, I think our community, I've said it since I got here, and I continue to say it, I think our community is very safe. This is the same Sun Belt Conference cities comparing the property crime. And again, this is off of the UCR numbers. This is burglary, theft, motor vehicle theft primarily. And you can see we're third on this particular chart from the bottom. We're that silver color, that's third from the left. Again, Boone, North Carolina, and San Marcos, Texas, both of them a little bit lower than us. So before we move into the philosophy piece of it, does anyone have any questions just about the crime stats as they exist?
Chief, when you think about Boone, Boone is isolated in the mountains. And so, unlike Statesboro is a regional center. And a lot of people from all around come, they converge on Statesboro. But in Boone, they're protected by the mountains.
And the question comes up quite often, how do gangs drive our crime stats? How does it evolve? As we've talked about before, we do have gang members in town. We do have some organized crime gang figures in town. I can tell you that today's street gang is not the same as 10 years ago. It really is much more organized crime related than it is turf kind of gang, issues. And it's all driven by drugs. It's all driven by the profit motive from drugs. I read a stat the other day that, and I can't quote it exactly, but 70 or 80% of the world's illegal narcotics are flowing into the United States. And I can tell you that you rarely hear about a warehouse being found full of old drugs that are mildewing. Right? Those drugs are being imported and people are buying them nationwide. We have an insatiable appetite, and it's unfortunate, but violent crime particularly is driven by the drug trade. So yeah, we have an issue like everybody else does, and it's because of our own insatiable appetite. And when I say our own, I'm not including myself in that number. So policing, I was asked to just briefly discuss what my philosophy of policing is. This is a quote from Sir Robert Peel in 1829. You might recall from your history lessons. Sir Robert Peel was tasked by the Parliament in Britain to come up with under the London Metropolitan Police Act, to develop the first modern police force. All of our police force in the United States are based upon the model that was built in 1829, believe it or not. So again, the police are the public and the public are the police. The police being only members of the public who are paid to give full-time attention to duties which are incumbent on every citizen in the interests of community welfare and existence. Folks, we don't exist without the community's support. Can you imagine if everybody just decided not to pull over when we try to stop them, right? I mean, it would break down pretty quickly from there. And so it really is the police, simply people who've been hired full-time to do the policing function that is truly incumbent on every one of us to try to prevent and dissuade, and then to be our eyes and ears out there, because we just can't be everywhere. I added this slide because this speaks to how I view policing. The Bill of Rights is designed to protect the citizens from an overreaching, oppressive government. The police, as the visible representation of the government, always need to be cognizant that the Constitution protects the people from the police, and it is our responsibility to always ensure that we're following constitutional principles as we provide the policing service to our community. This seems counterintuitive to some folks. The Fourth Amendment primarily is the amendment of the Bill of Rights that we operate under daily, because it's about searching and seizing. That's what we do. When we take a person into custody, we have seized them for constitutional purposes. When we look through their stuff, we're searching them for constitutional purposes, right? The police are the ones in our communities who are in the best position to protect the people's rights. And that seems counterintuitive, because we've also empowered the police to take your rights away from you temporarily. But if that is done correctly, if the police do it appropriately, they're actually protecting your rights under the Constitution in a way that nobody else gets to or has that opportunity to do. And I believe in that very strongly. And then I wanted to throw this as my last slide. It's just our department credo. I brought this credo to the Wyoming Police Department that I was the police chief of before coming here. I brought it here as well. These are not just words we put up on the wall, or words we put on our business card, right? This is a philosophy of how we conduct business. That word duty really is the what of what we do. It's our responsibilities. It's what we've been tasked with. It's the jobs that you all have asked us to do on your behalf as a community. But it really is the what. That honor piece is the how. We're going to conduct ourselves with integrity. We're going to be transparent. And like I tell my guys, from a leadership perspective, I'm never going to tell them something to do that I can't explain. If I'm not willing to explain it, I ought not to be telling them to do it. And that needs to translate into how they police on the street, or as they're doing, detective follow-up, and tell them very clearly, if you have to bend or twist the law to make it fit, it doesn't fit, right? And that's an honorable piece of how we do our job. And then that community piece is equally a third of that. Lacking a community, there's no point to us being here, right? Lacking the community support, there's no point to us being here. And so these words really sum up how I feel about policing in the United States. So, questions at all?
Yeah, I just want to say that there are some police departments that I can't speak highly of because they're not abiding by the law. But Chief, I'm very proud of your work and effort, so I just want to commend you on the work that you've been doing and been doing for the city of Statesboro. So thank you so very much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. We're blessed, and I tell you, I'll give a shout out to the men and women that are willing to put this badge on, particularly in this day and age, and go out and police a community that, I have to tell you, my third policing community. The first one was apathetic toward the police. The second one was anti-police to some degree, and this community is incredibly supportive of the police. So it's been an interesting transition for me to see that difference. But I want you to know that the men and women, not that we're not going to make mistakes, we work in a dynamic environment sometimes, but the men and women that we have hired to protect this city really do care about the community and the people in it, and I'm proud of the work they're doing in spite of the challenges all day, every day. Thank you.
Thank you.
I wanted to also thank Chief for all that he does. You do a fantastic job, and I appreciate everything you do.
Chief, you heard me?
Yes, I did. Thank you.
Okay. Chief says thank you. Yeah, he's looking around. Okay. All right, and so we are, Mr. Penny, if you will, I know you sent us an email earlier.
Yeah.
You want to give us a little bit of insight?
I do. I want to pass out some information to you before I start now. I'm not as well organized. Yep, you will give. There we go. Yeah, you move too fast. But each one of you get one of those. Make sure everybody gets one of those. Two of those.
You have anything for me?
Okay.
Do you have anything for me? Just sign off on it.
No.
Okay.
I'm taking.
Could you sign the proclamation on Friday?
Okay, I'm good.
Yep.
Thank you.
Mayor and members of the council, before I get into recommendation, Ms. Moran asked if we could get some information. We just wanted to see how things were going. You know, we've been in this pandemic since March. And just to see how things are flowing. So I asked Carrie Milton from United Way on some numbers, and you have a sheet, a short sheet, and you can see that she shared just some information with us, like number of applications submitted online, 127 for some type of assistance. Number of applicants who submitted required documentation, about 50. Number of applicants who are currently under review to have 11. And number of applicants approved, 22. And you can see the type rental assistance, 16, $7,100, utility bills, 6, and $1,360. And then you can see at the bottom, she says, we're currently seeing a spike in families, individuals who are facing eviction. However, even if some of these applicants meet the requirements due to the amount that must be paid, $1,500 to $2,000, we are not able to approve them. If we pay the max, about $500, eviction will still take place. We will not keep them in their house for an additional 30 days. So, and I read that because we have people on Facebook Live, so we want them to be able to see this, hear this information as well. And then I talked with Diane Hardy from DFACS, and I shared with you some information from her organization talking about food stamps. And if you look at food stamps in January of 2020, they had 4,883 active cases. And they spent a total of $1.2 million in that month. But if you drop down to August of 2020, that 4,883 is now 6,270. And you see the number of active clients has increased, and the applications that they processed up to 522. The bottom line, that number that was 1.2 in January 2020 is now $2,457,955. And she has some other information on the back about Medicaid. But again, you can see the number of active cases in January, 6,061. In August of 2020, 6,686. And so I just wanted to share that information with you. Then I call your attention to the memo that I gave you in reference to financial assistance for rental mortgage, small business, and utility assistance. I think it was back in August, we had a pretty extensive conversation about the possibility of being able to do something for people in our community as a result of, in anticipation of receiving the CARES Act money. But I also told you at the time that didn't want to do anything until we were assured that we were going to get a second round of CARES Act money. And sadly, last week we found out that we weren't going to get a second round. Governor chose to put the money in the Unemployment Compensation Trust Fund, which needed money too. So originally we had talked about doing $200,000 for rental assistance, mortgage assistance, small business assistance, and utility assistance. When we didn't get a second round, thought was, well, we just wouldn't do anything. And I know all y'all. and I felt like you still want to do something in the community. So I just want to, and talking with the mayor, so let's see if we can't do something with the money that we have received. And we have received $1.7 million. That was for public safety purposes. However, when you look at those numbers, there are folks out there that need help. And so what I wanted to recommend to you is that we can take $250,000 out of that 1.7 and provide assistance in our community. And the way I would recommend you break it down is $75,000 for utility assistance, $75,000 for rental mortgage assistance. And if you look at Carrie's numbers, she needs more money to be able to help people. And then $75,000 for small business assistance. And whenever I looked at for rental and mortgage assistance, when we had the conversation several months ago, we went through a discussion about how much money we should set aside. So not a set amount, but the rent might not be as much, but if someone is trying to stave off a foreclosure, they're going to need, like what Carrie said, anywhere from $1,500 to $2,000. So what I said is if we could recommend up to $3,000, if someone is in a foreclosure, that might help save somebody's home. We wish we could do more, but at least this is a start. And then for small businesses, I remember the conversation, I think we had settled on about $7,500, but that's when we were setting it at $200,000. So again, the Business Innovation Group from Georgia Southern would process the applications, and they did a great job with the Love Your City campaign, and the way they analyzed that money, and they took 28.5 and stretched it, served 14 businesses in our community. So, but we capped that thing at $2,500. And so for this one, not thinking that we could do $7,500, but if we at least set up to $5,000, there might be some businesses that they look at $2,500 and they're like, well, maybe I don't want to go through this for that amount of money, but $5,000 might really make a big difference to some little bit bigger businesses that got the money before. So that was the recommendation, to set the cap at $5,000 for the small businesses. And then for utility assistance, to set that at $175. But when talking to Action Pack said that for water and sewer utilities, and probably natural gas, the money that they get from low-income assistance, they can't use for water and sewer bills. but our funds could be used for water and sewer bills, and there are folks that struggle paying those bills as well. So I wanted to recommend to the council, and we attach the resolution, that if you're so inclined to make these funds available to these agencies, and our goal would be to start processing applications with these entities, not through the city of Statesboro, on October 30th. So we give people time to let us get the word out, if you're inclined to do this. But I just believe that we need to help folks in our community so that they can benefit from the CARES Act money that we did get. And I will say, there may be an opportunity that the governor did set some money aside, that there may be some more CARES Act funds that might come to us. And if that should happen, we can go back and do more. But I believe it's a start. I don't think the pandemic is going to be over anytime soon. So for us to be able to at least do this, and maybe there'll be an opportunity to do a little bit more sometime later. But that's my recommendation to you.
Thank you, Mr. Pugh. Vote on that today?
Any direction on that? I would ask you to do that.
So let me open it up to council for discussion.
Just have one question. In your utility assistance, you mentioned water, sewer, natural gas, and electric. Doesn't concerted services already take care of electric, or no? And the reason I ask that is just $175. You know, that's like 2-3 months worth of water and natural gas. Is not a whole lot, and honestly, quite a lot of people would probably burn up $175 in one electric bill, or at least one electric bill and one water bill. So my point was, is if we've already got if there already is a program that we can, that folks can access money for electric, can we just make sure that this goes to water, sewer, natural gas? Or anyway, I'm asking that question though. Don't we have concerted services that does specifically electric?
Can you help me with that one? Because I'm not familiar with it.
I'm not sure of those details, but I know Action Pack, which is formerly Concerted Services.
Oh, right.
We do utilize their services for utility credits.
Right.
But I know they administer other programs, but I'm not sure of the specific details.
So we can ask those questions. I would just ask for you to allow us the flexibility to make it work. But I do know we want to make sure, we don't have restrictions on this money since it came from public safety. And so it's not like we're going to have to go back to the state and explain that we decided that we were going to help folks in our community out of the money that we received. We don't have to report it back to anybody. I did need to mention one thing, Mayor. We did allow for $25,000 in there for some administrative fees. Big hasn't asked for anything, but United Way and Action Pack have asked for some administrative support. United Way is still providing that assistance for the Love Your City campaign, and they receive no administrative support out of that. And she did say it's getting to be sort of not, they're going to keep doing it, but they've been hoping to get an intern that could help them with some of that paperwork. Okay.
Any further discussion by council?
Yes, please. Thank you for doing this, and yes, I want us to do it. I've got a question about the paperwork you've given us here from Carrie Melton. This is the project, what's already going on. The Love Your City campaign, this is her report on what she's done with that.
I don't think that's just Love, I don't think that's just Love Your City. I think that's, she was given an indication, because for the Love Your City campaign, the numbers weren't this high.
Okay, and I was thinking the last time we got a report, it was still ongoing.
It still is ongoing, but I don't think this is just based on Love Your City.
Okay. But she's saying that the most she could approve was $500, and they weren't going to approve those because it wouldn't keep people from being evicted. Wasn't that one of our limits?
Yeah, but I think that, and I'm drawing a blank, Ms. Barr, that may have been the limit. $500 was the limit, under the Love Your City campaign.
Right.
And so basically what she's saying is, if I pay that 500, that's not gonna stop them from being evicted. They're still gonna evict them anyway.
Right.
And so, but with the 1,500 to 2,000, we can probably get somebody out of, hopefully that's not rent. But if somebody's 3 or 4 months behind, it could be somebody's rent.
Right. Yeah, I'm just trying to understand this report from her because of the 127 submitted, she's only been able to approve 22 people.
She just says family relief fund data. She did say family
Yeah,
relief fund.
yeah. So it sounds like, just like before, it sounds like maybe a little too strict. We need to give them some leeway.
And again, we need more flexibility, and those are things that we'll.
Help more people.
Yeah.
I concur with Sherry on this, because that's something that I brought up last time. Like, all families have been affected by this pandemic. If you're part of this pandemic, you've been affected in some type of way. And this assistance should be able to help everyone that has been affected. And I know a lot of times with United Way, they put a cap on who they assist based upon your income level. But we can prove that, if you can prove that you've been affected by it, you should be helped.
And this should not be income based. What this has to be is they've got to be able to identify that they were adversely impacted by the pandemic. If they've had a job loss, stuff like that. And again, one of the challenges is, we all have been impacted by COVID in one way or another. But sometimes, and Carrie shared with me one experience where someone went to work and found out that there was somebody that was positive at their job. And then they decided they weren't gonna work there anymore.
Yeah.
Now, that puts us in a sort of it's not that they were laid off. They voluntarily decided that they weren't gonna be there. And that's a tough call. But this way, we need to know that these folks were adversely impacted. They were either laid off, their business closed, or something like that.
Any further discussion with council?
Hopefully we can get more applications processed than the ones that we got. Because to me, that's a low number. You got this many applications and, only a certain amount has been approved. That's a little low to me.
But again, we had a very small amount of, we were, and I don't want to say small, Mayor get upset. We had $42,000 for the Love You City campaign.
So all of that money has been used?
Pretty much. 28 was for businesses, and the balance of it was for families.
And one thing that we're gonna look at is that, we had 127 applicants, but only 50 of them submitted the actual, the documentation that they needed, and of that 50, 22 were approved. So I think we need to look at that. And, I am, and I'm gonna put Mr. Penny on the spot, but I'm gonna ask the council, support incurring the administrative fee for this, and use all $250,000 to help families within the community. That's what I would like to ask council to do, because to me, I believe that's the right thing to do. And to keep families in their homes, I think that $25,000 should go to mortgage and rental assistance. So council, what is your thought process on that?
Mr. Mayor, may I ask Mr. Penny another question? That was a 25,000 and up to 25,000? Or do we know it would cost that much for those three entities to?
One of the entities gave me a fee.
10%?
And, I'm sorry.
One of them was 10%?
Yes, and so, and United Way did not quote a fee, but that's why we set it up to that amount. And again, Business Innovation Group, they didn't ask me anything, and they just said, we ready to go. But at the same time, they are providing a valuable service to us. And they may very well say, we don't need anything, we're ready to roll. The mayor likes to put me on the spot. But we can make it work. We can make it work. And we want to do 100,000 for the mortgage, rental and mortgage assistance.
Yes, I don't know whether you guys seen the posting today about our local teachers and social workers. They are going to these children's homes to try to find them. There's a lot of people in our community that's hurting. And you know, if we can't keep the lights on, if we can just keep them in a home, I think that'll help our community tremendously. So that's what the thought process is with that. I for one be very appreciative the council can support that. But if the council will want to go in a different direction, I think any help that we provide is going to be good.
If Ms. Penny says we have that 25 and we can use it, then I go along with it.
Mayor, I believe we can handle the 25. I feel more comfortable using the CARES Act funds for these, and even I can find 25,000 in order to pay the administrative fee, but didn't want someone to question our use of other city funds to provide grant funds. So that's why I was trying to stay in the CARES, but we can handle administrative fees other ways.
Okay, thank you. All right, so is there a motion to approve?
May I make one more comment first? So I know we don't get to dictate to Carrie Melton or United Way how they have to process, but that would be the concern that I would want to share with her, is this concern that out of 127, I mean, what kind of paperwork requirements? It may be that it's really onerous or challenging or difficult if only 50 people. I mean, they wanted enough to come apply, but only 50 even submitted. So just to share that concern.
Yeah, let's figure that out, because I mean, we need the help. We need the help. So you spot on. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. So I move that we adopt as presented, yes.
You would amend it.
As amended, thank you.
Do 75 and 100 for housing.
Okay.
So moved.
So moved. Is there a second? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right. It's a letter show that agenda item 16B has passed unanimously. We'll move down to agenda item 17 if there's no other business from council. You good?
I'd like to say something.
Okay.
First of all, lock your doors. I've been getting all the felonies every 2 weeks, and in just the last 2 weeks, 2 pistols have been stolen out of unlocked cars.
Oh my.
Please lock your cars. And that's just 2 weeks. Please lock your cars. Next thing I say is wear a mask. Vote. Love one another. Respect one another. Show your love. Show your respect. Please. That's all it is.
Amen.
Thank you, Councilman.
And if I may, Chief, that's like the #1 way criminals are getting guns, right? Is stealing it from
unlocked cars.
Yes. Unlocked cars.
Unlocked cars.
Not locked. They ain't breaking your windows. They're opening your door and and I'll tell you, I mean, this even happened to me personally. Somebody.
I know you're in here.
Oh yeah.
You're in the report.
Somebody, I inadvertently left my car unlocked, I think overnight, and they didn't, I shouldn't really tell you what's in my car, so, anyway, but, they no chicken. But they rifled through my glove box, but that was the only thing they did. They looked clearly, like they took out, I had a couple of books on tape in there and a box of tissues or something, yeah. They threw that in the car, left the glove box open. That was the only thing. They didn't look in the back. They didn't look in the back seat, nothing. So clearly they were looking for a gun. So if you got one, you know, we all talk about our Second Amendment right. Well, your rights come with responsibilities. Lock that damn gun up. Thank you.
Don't let that got me a joke in, but I ain't gonna say it.
Go ahead.
All right, with that being said, we move down to agenda item 17. Is there anything for city manager comments?
Mayor, I was just going to mention the the cleanup on Saturday.
Okay.
So we'll be out in the community trying to clean it up.
Absolutely, I'll be right out there. With that being said, we're down to agenda item 18, public comments. Any public comments?
Does someone else have any?
No.
Oh, okay. I'm Ann P.D. Gleason, and I'd just like to let y'all know I'm running for state representative from House District 158. And I just wanted to come here today and meet y'all, Sherry Barr was the person that said to me this morning, she was like, you've got to come to the city council meeting. So thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you, Nicole, for allowing me to speak. My main focus, actually, what motivated me to get into this race is the need to expand Medicaid in the state of Georgia, because my own personal experience with that. Because of the Affordable Care Act, I could get an MRI, even though I have MS, an annual MRI, just to check out what my status is every year, if it's progressed or not progressed. And they actually caught that I had an aneurysm in my brain. And then I had 2 additional tests that confirmed, yes, and that was the diagnosis, I had a brain aneurysm. I was able to, within a very short period of time, go into a surgery, have a craniotomy, have it clamped so it wouldn't rupture, and I'm here to tell the story. Whereas, unfortunately, so many people do learn the ticking time bomb goes off, and that's how they learn they have a brain aneurysm. And they either don't make it, or they make it and they're irreversibly impaired for the rest of their life. And I'm very aware that a lot of people have a ticking time bomb, but don't have access to health care. And that's something that really does bother me about, not only do I see like rural hospitals having problems staying open because they can't receive federal assistance that Medicaid expanded would allow them to receive, but also the fact is so many people cannot see a doctor besides just maybe going to the emergency room, or one time seeing a doctor at a clinic. They see a new doctor every time, and it's $60 if they can prove that they can't afford anything. So that's really my main focus. But another issue that I think would be very of interest in Statesboro is I would like there to be some kind of public transit or shuttle service to link up with Savannah and Augusta in our area, because I know there are a lot of people that honestly do not have automobiles and do not work, who would work if they could find a job. And to be honest, there are not so many jobs people can actually have around here, because say for instance, a lot of the counties that I would be serving that are not, there's not a plentiful amount of jobs for the people to have. But I think Statesboro would actually benefit from that as well, because I mean, I know Georgia Southern, going to Savannah, being able to link up. So that's definitely a focus of mine, the transportation issue, because I'm aware so many people around here really are stuck here in a sense. They can't go out. And the thing is, if people were to work outside of this area, they would be able to pay more in the way of taxes, bring in revenue for the county. And I think that's something that people should think about if they care about financial growth of an area. So if y'all would consider me, please, I would really greatly appreciate you thinking. And thank you very much for allowing me to speak.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. And so we'll move on from public comments if there's no others. And we'll look at agenda item 19, which is consideration of a motion to enter into executive session to discuss personnel matters, real estate, and or potential litigation in accordance with OCGA 50-14-3B. We will need to go into executive session. Do we have a motion to move into executive session?
So moved.
Is there a second? Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Who's your fire man, Charles?
You want that?
Yeah, thank you.